Hey guys, tonight we're heading into a different kind of darkness. Not castles, not peasants, not rats in the straw, but a place where misery was engineered with intention. A place where survival itself became a gamble you'd never really won. We're talking about the life of an American prisoner of war in Vietnam. And I'll warn you now, it isn't comfortable, it isn't noble, and it certainly isn't the kind of story you'll find in a textbook chapter wrapped in patriotic gloss. This is the side of war that strips people down to their barest limits and then pushes past them. Before we begin, take a second to settle in, dim the lights, make yourself as comfortable as possible, because comfort is about to become something distant, something you'll only appreciate more by contrast. Maybe you've got a fan running, or a blanket that smells fresh from the wash. Notice that, hold on to it, because where we're going, those things don't exist. You're not going to be sitting in a quiet bedroom, or a living room with snacks nearby. You're about to be dropped into a cell on the other side of the world in the middle of the 1960s, stripped of everything that makes life normal. Imagine it starting with the crack of gunfire in thick jungle air. One moment you're part of a mission, and the next you're the mission. Captured, outnumbered, dragged away with your arms bound, with no idea whether you'll ever walk free again. The terrain smells like damp leaves, sweat, gunpowder and decay, and your boots slip on mud as you stumble forwards. Your ears ring from adrenaline, but the shouting around you is sharp, foreign and absolute. You're no longer in control of your body or your future. The story we're about to sink into isn't glamorous. It doesn't end with parades or medals. It's the reality of men held in places like Hoa Lo Prison, nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton, or in hidden jungle camps strung together with bamboo, wire, and fear. These aren't clean facilities. They aren't even consistent. Each one is its own nightmare, designed to grind down prisoners until they stop being men and start being ghosts of themselves. So tonight, you'll step into their shoes. You'll wake up where they woke up. You'll eat what they ate, or rather, what they barely ate, and you'll feel the weight of the silence, the heat, the blows, and the years that stretched on longer than most people can imagine. It's not about shock. It's about the small, grinding details, the ones that made every hour a test. Settle in now. Your bed is soft, your air is clean, and your door opens freely. In a moment, all of that will be taken away. You're deep in the jungle, where the air feels more like liquid than gas, and every breath drags in humidity so thick it coats your throat. The sound is constant, never still. Cicadas screech, birds cackle from branches you can't see, and somewhere far too close, there's the hollow thump of artillery echoing like a heartbeat you can't control. You've been moving for hours, boots slipping in mud, uniform plastered to your skin with a mixture of sweat, rain and fear. You're not thinking about home. Not anymore. You're thinking about the patrol that didn't come back, about the radio static that cut off mid-sentence, and about the fact that nothing around you looks friendly. It happened fast. Faster than you expect. 1 second, you're brushing past wet bamboo, squinting against a shaft of sunlight, and the next, the ground erupts with shouting. Figures blur out of the trees. Lean men in sandals with rifles are already raised. You don't have time to react. Your weapon's up, but so is theirs, and there are too many of them. The gunfire is loud but short, a burst that cuts through the jungle noise and leaves your ears ringing. Someone next to you goes down, hard, A scream cut short by the weight of his own gear. You hit the ground, not out of choice, but because the butt of a rifle slams against the side of your head. Stars explode in your vision, and then it's mud, blood, and the sharp sting of cord cutting into your wrists. The jungle closes in around you, suddenly alien. The trees don't feel like cover anymore. They feel like bars. You're shoved forward, stumbling, your knees buckling as rough hands yank you upright again. Command bark in a language you don't understand, sharp syllables that don't need translation. The barrel of a gun pressed into your back tells you everything you need to know. Your body isn't yours anymore. Every step is dictated by the men around you, their eyes cold, their grip unforgiving. Your wrists burn as rope digs deeper with each stumble. The vines overhead block most of the sun, but the heat doesn't care. It clings to you, wrapping tight, making every breath feel shallow. Sweat drips into your eyes, stings, blurs your vision, but you can't wipe it away. You're forced to walk blind, listening more than seeing, and what you hear doesn't help. The shuffle of boots and sandals all around you, the occasional metallic click of a safety being adjusted, and the low, harsh muttering of your captors. They don't sound hurried, they don't sound nervous. To them, this is routine. To you, it's the moment life as you knew it ends. You try to count your steps at first, to map the path in your mind, but the terrain makes it impossible. One moment you're sinking ankle deep in sludge, the next you're climbing over roots thick enough to trip a truck. Your captors move like they belong here, like the ground shifts for them, not against them. You don't. You slip, twist, nearly fall face first into a patch of leaves that could hide anything from snakes to punji stakes, and you're hauled upright again with a jerk that nearly dislocates your shoulder. The world narrows. It's just the pain in your arms, the pounding in your skull, the metallic taste of fear in your mouth. Hours blur together. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth, desperate for water, but the canteen was ripped from you the moment they grabbed you. Your pack is gone, your weapon gone, your identity stripped down to a bound body being driven forward by the sharp edge of foreign voices. At some point, you start to smell smoke. Faint at first, carried on the damp air, then stronger as you're pushed deeper into the green maze. It mixes with the rot of the jungle floor, with the musk of your captors, with the salt of your own sweat until your stomach churns. You can't tell if the smoke means a village, a camp, or just another reminder that fire can swallow anything here without warning. Time doesn't pass normally. The jungle swallows the sun long before it sets. You lose track of whether it's morning or afternoon. All you know is your legs ache so badly that each step feels like a separate injury. The ropes cut deeper, leaving raw grooves in your skin, and every stumble is punished with a shove, a strike, or a barked order you can't understand but feel in your bones. You're not a soldier anymore, you're cargo. And then the fear settles in, not in spikes like the moment of capture, but as a slow, grinding weight. You don't know where you're being taken. You don't know if you'll ever see daylight without a blindfold again. You don't know if the next stop means interrogation, or execution, or something you haven't even imagined yet. The jungle keeps closing in, and every root, every shadow, every buzzing mosquito reminds you how far from safety you've gone. The march doesn't stop. You start to notice how quiet the jungle becomes at times, the way the birds seem to vanish when the column pushes through. as if even the animals know better than to make noise when men like these move. Your boots are heavy with mud, so caked that they feel like weights dragging you down, and the more you stumble, the rougher the hands on your arms become. Sometimes it's a shove, sometimes it's a strike across the back, a sharp sting that makes your spine jolt. You don't have the energy to resist, not that resistance would mean anything. You're surrounded, outnumbered, unarmed. Your only weapon now is endurance, and it's already fraying. The ropes chafe until you're certain the skin on your wrists has broken open. You can't look down to check, but you can feel the wetness, the raw sting that means blood. Every jolt of the rope grinds the fibres deeper, and no matter how you twist, there's no relief. The heat makes it worse, sweat sliding into the wounds, turning the burning into something constant. You clench your fists until your fingers cramp, but it does nothing except remind you how helpless you are. The column stops occasionally, but never for long. A whispered command, a wave of a hand, and everyone drops into a crouch. You're forced down too, shoved so hard your knees hit the ground, and mud seeps instantly through your fatigues. You stay like that, head down, gasping quietly, every muscle shaking. The mosquitoes swarm, drawn to the sweat and blood, and there's nothing you can do to swat them away. They settle on your neck, your arms, your face, feeding as you try not to move, try not to draw attention. One of your captors glances at you and smirks, watching you twitch under the bites. It's amusement to them, a game where your suffering is the entertainment. When the march starts again, it feels worse than before. Your body stiffens in the pauses, and every time you're yanked back to your feet, the pain is sharper. Your shoulders ache from being pulled so tightly, the sockets screaming every time you're jerked forward. Your legs feel hollow, like there's nothing inside them but air, and still you move, because the alternative isn't rest, it's punishment. At some point, you stop trying to mark the time. Minutes, hours, it all blends together. The jungle has no clock, no shadows that make sense, just an endless sameness of green and brown, of dripping leaves and sucking mud. Your mind starts to drift, trying to find anything to hold on to. A meal you once had, a bed you once slept in, a familiar smell, a sound. But the jungle eats that too. It gives you only the present, the ropes, the mud, the voices you don't understand, the certainty that you're not coming back from this the same person you were before. And that's when the reality begins to sink in. Capture isn't just the loss of freedom, it's the loss of everything familiar. The jungle, the march, the bruises, the hunger already gnawing at you. They're only the beginning. Your legs keep moving, though you're no longer sure if it's out of will or because the men around you refuse to let you stop. Every step feels like a decision your body can't afford to make, yet somehow it happens again and again. The jungle path twists and narrows until it barely feels like a path at all. More like the ground itself is resisting you. Vines lash across your face, thorns scrape your arms, mud swallows your boots, and still you're driven forward with hands bound and a rifle barrel always hovering close enough to remind you what happens if you stumble too long. The march doesn't feel like it has a destination. It feels endless, like the jungle is the only reality left, and the camp they're taking you to is just a vague threat meant to keep you terrified. The truth is, the march itself is already a kind of prison. The ropes around your wrists cut so deep that you've lost sensation in your fingers. The cords rub raw against swollen skin, sticky with blood and sweat. Your arms ache from being pulled every time you falter, and the men guarding you don't hesitate to drive their rifle butts into your ribs when you lag too far behind. The jungle becomes a tunnel. The canopy overhead blocks most of the sunlight, leaving only streaks of brightness that never seem to touch the ground. The air is a soup of humidity, insects, and the smell of your own body breaking down. Every breath tastes of rot and damp earth, and you wonder how much of it is the jungle, and how much of it is you. Your fatigues cling so tightly to your skin that it feels like you're wearing a second, heavier body, one that drags at your shoulders and slows every movement. Hunger sets in faster than you expect. The adrenaline from capture has long since burned out, leaving only a hollow ache in your gut. You think about rations, about cans of food and powdered coffee, about things that feel impossible now. Your captors don't offer anything, not food, not water, not even a pause long enough to rest. They move with practiced efficiency, like this is routine, just another delivery of bodies. For them, the jungle isn't punishment, it's home. They glide over the mud, push through the brush, and hardly seem to sweat at all. You, on the other hand, are falling apart one step at a time. Water is worse than food. Your throat feels like sandpaper, every swallow sharp and dry. Sweat pours out of you, soaking your uniform, dripping into your eyes, but nothing replaces it. When you stumble past a stream, the sound of water rushing over rocks feels like mockery. You imagine plunging your face into it, gulping it down, even though you know it's crawling with parasites. But the men don't stop. They march you past without hesitation, their eyes daring you to try and break free. You keep walking, mouth dry, tongue heavy, the thought of water tormenting you more than the ropes. The march stretches into days. You lose track quickly because sleep is stolen in fragments, never whole. At night, they tether you to a tree, hand still bound, body pressed against damp ground, crawling with ants. The mosquitoes are worse, swarming so thick that you can feel them buzzing in your ears and biting through your clothes. You slap at them awkwardly with tied hands until exhaustion forces you to stop. When you close your eyes, it isn't rest. It's just drifting in and out of a shallow haze while your body stiffens and your skin becomes a feast for insects. The mornings are worse. You're hauled upright before the sun fully rises, stiff and aching, your joints screaming as you're forced back into motion. There's no coffee, no breakfast, just the immediate slap of humidity and the sound of boots shoving you forward. The jungle is merciless in the dawn, alive with shrieks of unseen animals, the calls of birds that sound like laughter, mocking your misery. Your captors eat silently when they stop, passing rice and or dried fish between them, never offering you a scrap, and you smell it salty and sharp, and your stomach twists so hard it feels like a cramp. They watch you sometimes, eyes blank, amused by your hunger, then continue as if you don't exist. Blisters form on your feet, deep and raw, until every step feels like fire. The mud soaks your boots, softening the skin until it peels, and each stumble drives grit deeper into the wounds. Infection is inevitable. You know it, and they know it, but no one cares. You keep walking because pain is better than being left behind, and you know what being left behind would mean. You've already seen how little hesitation they have to raise a weapon, how quick the rifle butt cracks against your body if you fall too far. The march breaks down your sense of time, but it also breaks down your sense of self. You stop thinking of yourself as a soldier, or even as a person with a name. You're just one more body in a column, one more set of bound hands and blistered feet. Your captors don't speak to you, except in barks and shoves. You're not a prisoner with rights. You're a trophy, a resource, proof of their control. They strip you of individuality until all that's left is the weight of your body stumbling forward under the weight of ropes. There are others too. Sometimes you catch glimpses of fellow captives in the column. Men with the same ropes digging into their wrists, the same hollow eyes, the same shuffling walk. You don't speak. You can't. Any attempt to whisper is punished instantly. And besides, what would you say? The silence between prisoners is heavier than the ropes, filled with the knowledge that each of you is enduring the same suffering, but none of you can help the other. The jungle makes sure of it, wrapping you in isolation even when you're surrounded. When storms come, they don't slow. The sky cracks open, rain hammering down so hard it blinds you, turns the ground into a river of mud, fills your boots until every step squelches. You're soaked within seconds, water dripping into your eyes, running down your neck, chilling you even in the heat. The guards pull ponchos from their packs, covering themselves, while you're left to march in drenched fatigues that cling heavier with every mile. At night, there's no fire to dry by, no blanket to wrap around yourself. Just wet clothes pressed against cold skin until shivering takes over. Teeth rattling in your skull while mosquitoes continue their endless assault. Every moment of the march is a lesson in control. They decide when you move, when you stop, when you crouch in silence. They decide if you eat, if you drink, if you breathe without pain. You learn quickly that hesitation brings punishment, that any attempt at defiance is crushed instantly. You're not being marched to a camp. You're being dismantled step by step until obedience feels like the only survival. And yet, even as you stumble onward, there's a gnawing fear that the camp isn't the end of this suffering, but only the beginning. The march is brutal, but it's also a preparation, a grinding down of the body and mind, so that when you finally see the gates of captivity, you're too broken to resist. The jungle teaches you to obey. The guards enforce it with every strike, every barked order, every refusal to let you rest. By the time you reach wherever they're taking you, the jungle itself has already done half their work. The march ends not with relief, but with something heavier. The realization that you have reached a place designed to make misery permanent. You don't see it at first, because the jungle doesn't give way all at once. It starts with a thinning of trees, the sudden appearance of paths more beaten down than the ones you've stumbled through for days. The ground feels different under your boots, tamped flat from countless feet. And then the sound changes too. No longer the random chorus of insects and birds, but the low clatter of human activity. Voices, wood striking wood, the faint metallic clink of something you can't place until you're shoved forward one more time and the gates appear. They're not the towering stone walls you might picture when you think of a prison. They're wooden, patched together, crude in some places, reinforced in others. Bamboo, barbed wire, rough boards hammered into place with no concern for symmetry. But what they lack in appearance, they make up for in message. The gates stand taller than you, wide enough to swallow you whole, and as they creak open, you realise it doesn't matter if they're made of wood, steel or straw. What matters is that they shut behind you. The first smell that hits is worse than the jungle rot you've been breeding for days. It's human, dense and sour, the combined stench of sweat, feces, sickness and despair packed into one small space. It clings to the air so thick that your stomach lurches before you can stop it. The guards notice, of course. They always notice. A sharp shove between your shoulder blades sends you stumbling into the compound, head down, the stink wrapping around you like another set of ropes. The yard is dirt, packed hard from years of shuffling feet, broken by patches of mud where the rain refuses to drain. You see the buildings now, low and narrow, their walls streaked with mildew, and their roofs sagging under the weight of rot. They look more like sheds than cells, but the bars across the windows make the purpose clear. Some are wooden, others reinforced with rusted metal, all of them designed to keep bodies inside. And behind those bars you catch glimpses of faces. Pale, hollow, sunken eyes staring back at you with something between pity and warning. They don't shout, they don't wave. They just watch, silently, as if to tell you that soon you will be one of them. You're shoved again, this time toward a small platform near the gate. A guard barks something, and another steps forward with a clipboard, though you doubt it's being used for anything resembling accurate records. They strip you of what little you have left. The dog tags you prayed might protect you. The boots that carried you here. Even the belt holding your uniform together. Each item is tossed carelessly into a pile. Your identity reduced to scraps of metal and fabric now belonging to someone else. You're left barefoot in the mud, the cords biting into your wrists, the only reminder that you still exist in their system. The gates close behind you with a sound that echoes far louder than wood should. It's final, absolute, and it lodges in your chest with a weight you can't shake. The jungle, for all its cruelty, at least felt endless. A place where escape might still be imagined. Here, within these walls, there is no imagining. Only the certainty that you have been delivered into the machinery of something designed to hold you, break you, and keep you silent. The guards don't rush. They never rush. They walk you across the yard at a pace that feels deliberate, as if dragging out the moment of realization. Other prisoners glance up from where they crouch or sweep or simply sit in the dirt, their movements slow, mechanical, drained of energy. You see their clothes, ragged and stained, hanging loose on bodies thinned by hunger. You see their eyes, not meeting yours directly, but flicking just long enough to register a new arrival. They don't smile, they don't nod. They just look, and then return to whatever task keeps them upright. Inside, the sounds are worse than the silence. The scrape of metal hinges, the rattle of chains, the occasional cough that sounds too wet to ever heal. Somewhere a man groans, low and long, and it cuts off suddenly, replaced by the shuffle of boots. You're led down a corridor lined with cells, the air so stale it feels solid. Each cell you pass reveals more of the same. Men lying on mats thinner than cardboard, eyes closed, skin damp with fever. Some stir, some don't. You try not to look too long, because the guards are watching you even more closely than the prisoners. When they finally stop, it's in front of a door barely wider than your shoulders. One guard unlocks it with a key that looks like it hasn't been oiled in years, the metal screeching as it turns. The door swings inward and you're shoved inside before you can brace yourself. Your shoulder collides with the wall, damp and rough, and you stumble into the space that is now yours. It's not large enough to stretch out in fully. The floor is concrete, cracked and darkened with stains you don't want to identify. The air is thick, humid, and carries the same stench you smelled in the yard, only concentrated. A single window, no larger than a handspan, sits high on the wall, covered with rusted bars that let in more noise than light. The only furnishing is a mat rolled into the corner, filthy and flattened to the point of uselessness. The door slams shut behind you, the sound reverberating through the walls until it settles into silence. You're alone, but not alone. Every cough from the neighbouring cells, every rattle of chain, every distant bark of a guard's voice remind you that this place is alive with misery, and now you're part of it. You sit because standing feels pointless, and the weight of the march finally collapses onto you. Your body aches, your stomach twists with emptiness, your wrists pulse with pain, and your mind tries to understand how quickly freedom turned into this. You thought the jungle was bad. You thought the march was worse. But this place, these gates, this cell, they strip away even the illusion that suffering is temporary. The jungle let you imagine escape. Hunger let you dream of food. Thirst let you dream of water. Here the only thing left to imagine is how long it will take before you stop imagining anything at all. The door closes, and what little light existed vanishes like someone snuffed it out with purpose. It's not total darkness, not the kind you get in a cave or buried underground, but it's close enough that your eyes ache trying to adjust. The only illumination comes from the slit of a window high on the wall, where faint, dirty light filters through bars caked in rust. It's too little to see clearly, too much to let you forget what you can't see. The cell is smaller than it looked from the doorway. You measure it without meaning to, counting footsteps in the gloom. 3 paces one way, maybe 4 the other, before your bare feet hit damp wall. The air presses down like weight, thick with the stench of mildew, sweat, dust and human waste that seeped into the concrete. Breathing feels like swallowing something alive. Each inhale scratches at your throat, leaving behind a sour taste that makes you gag before you can stop yourself. You sit because standing feels impossible, but the floor offers no comfort. It's damp, cold in patches, sticky in others, textured with grime that has never been cleaned. The mat in the corner doesn't help. It's little more than a roll of straw beaten flat by countless bodies before yours. The smell radiating from it is sharp and foul, a mix of mould, old sweat, and something metallic that makes you wonder who last lay on it, and whether they left by walking or being carried. You don't stretch out on it, not yet, for now you crouch against the wall, arms wrapped around your knees, every muscle still twitching from the march. Time slows in here. Outside, the jungle at least gave you markers. Sunlight shifting through trees, the calls of birds at dawn and dusk. Inside, there is nothing. The single window is placed too high to offer any sense of the sky, and the light that filters through is so dim it barely shifts as hours crawl by. You're left guessing, trying to decide if you've been sitting there for minutes or days. Hunger and thirst blur the difference. The first sounds you notice are close. Breathing, low and ragged, coming through the wall on your left. At first you think it's your own, echoing strangely, but then it catches, hitching into a cough that rattles so deep it sounds like bones shaking. Someone is there, pressed into a space just like yours, just as dark, just as damp. You wait, listening, but the cough fades into silence. Whoever it is, they don't call out, they don't speak. They just exist, another body in another box, as forgotten as you. Sleep doesn't come, not really. You drift, body collapsing under exhaustion, but every sound jerks you back awake. Boots clatter in the corridor, keys scrape in locks. Shouts echo as guards bark orders you can't understand. Sometimes you hear footsteps stop outside your door, and your chest tightens as the key rattles in the lock, but it never turns all the way, not yet. They move on, leaving you in silence, broken only by distant groans, muffled cries, and the steady drip of water from a crack in the ceiling. The insect finds you quickly. Ants crawl across the floor, tiny black lines that vanish into cracks only to reappear on your skin. Mosquitoes buzz through the bars on the window and feast on your arms and legs. You slap at them with tied hands until your wrists throb, but it doesn't matter. They always return, drawn to the sweat and blood you can't stop shedding. The bites swell into welts that itch so fiercely you scrape them against the wall until they bleed, only for the cycle to start again. Your body is breaking down, and the cell makes sure you know it. The heat doesn't leave. It lingers, trapped by concrete and wood, turning the air into a stew that never cools, not even at night. Sweat soaks your clothes, dampening the mat until it reeks worse than before. Your stomach cramps, not just from hunger, but from the twisting sickness that comes with drinking water when they finally shove a tin cup into the room. It's warm, murky, with flecks floating on the surface. You drink anyway, because thirst claws harder than fear, and then you curl into yourself when the cramps hit. There's no bathroom here, only a corner already marked by filth, and you add to it because you have no choice. The guards check on you without words. They don't need them. A glare through the bars, a thud of a boot against the door, a sudden clatter meant to jolt you awake. You never know when it's coming. Sometimes they burst in, shouting, dragging you upright by the arms to stand in the yard, under the sun, until your knees buckle. Other times, they ignore you for hours, days even, leaving you in silence so heavy that you start to crave even the cruelty of their attention. Either way, the message is the same. Your comfort isn't yours to decide. Nothing is. The cell eats more than light. It eats sound, time, the small pieces of identity that remind you you're still human. You try to think of home, of names and faces, of places with clean air and soft beds, but the images blur, slipping away every time you close your eyes. The cell replaces them with new ones. The cracked wall in front of you, the dripping ceiling, the mat that smells like death. You don't dream anymore. You just replay the same details until they carve into your mind. At some point, you notice the scratching. Faint, irregular, coming from the wall opposite the cough. It's not rats, not insects. It's deliberate. Slow taps, uneven but purposeful. At first you think you're imagining it, the result of hunger and exhaustion, but then it comes again. You press your ear to the wall and wait. The taps return, spaced in a rhythm you can't quite decode. It's communication, primitive and desperate, from another prisoner trying to remind you that you're not the only one trapped here. You tap back, clumsy at first, unsure what to say without words. The silence that follows is long, but then another tap answers. It's not comfort, not exactly, but it's something. Proof that the cell hasn't swallowed everyone completely. But the guards know, of course. They always know. The scratching stops abruptly one day, cut off by the sound of boots and a scream so short and sharp it feels like it was yanked out of someone's chest. After that, the wall is silent. You don't press your ear to it again. You learn the rule the cell wanted to teach you. Hope is dangerous, connection is punished. Isolation isn't an accident here. It's the design. And so you stay in the cell day after day, or what feels like day after day. Time is gone, replaced by cycles of light and dark that mean nothing. You eat when they bring food, a thin soup of rice and vegetables that tastes of ash. Served in a dented tin, you're forced to lick clean, because you know there won't be more. You drink when they shove water at you, even when it tastes worse than the sweat dripping down your face. You lie down on the mat when your legs stop holding you, even when it stinks so badly you want to vomit. You scratch at the bites until they bleed, then scratch more because the pain is easier than the itching. This is life now. Not the march, not the jungle, not even the yard. Just 4 walls that eat the light, a mat that reeks of bodies long gone, and the certainty that this place was built to erase you, piece by piece. The ropes were bad enough. They dug into your wrists until they carved grooves deep enough to sting with every twitch. But ropes, at least, were temporary. They could be untied, cut, loosened by chance or neglect. Shackles are different. Shackles mean permanence. When they decide you've earned them, or maybe when they just feel like reminding you that movement is a privilege, the guards bring them out. You don't see them at first. You hear them. The clink of metal carried down the corridor, the scrape of iron dragged across the floor. It's a sound you know instantly, even before you see the shape of it. Metal means cold. Metal means weight. Metal means you're about to be bound in a way that has no slack, no mercy, no escape. The door opens and the guards step in, carrying chains that look older than the walls. Rust flakes from them, but the links are still solid, still heavy enough that you can feel the threat before they touch your skin. They don't explain. They don't need to. 2 of them pin you down, while another fits the cuffs around your ankles. The metal bites hard, closing with a finality that makes your stomach lurch. There's no padding, no smooth edges, just raw steel clamping against bone. Your skin protests instantly, pinched and bruised in seconds. The lock clicks, and that's it. You're not walking freely anymore. Every movement is a negotiation with the weight now shackled to you. The chains are short, deliberately so. When they fasten you to the floor, the length doesn't allow more than a shuffle. Sometimes not even that. You sit cross-legged because standing isn't an option, and lying down only works if you curl your body awkwardly, twisting your spine into shapes it was never meant to hold. Sleeping becomes another torment, each shift waking you as the cuffs bite into raw skin. The guards know it, of course. That's the point. It isn't just ankles. Sometimes they bind your wrists too, clamping metal cuffs so tight your hands swell within hours. The circulation slows, your fingers turn numb, then throb painfully as blood struggles to return. You shake them, twist them, try to find a position where the pain dulls. But there isn't one. The cuffs are designed for this, to make sure there's no escape, no comfort, not even the illusion of either. The weight is constant. Even when they unlock you to drag you outside for whatever task they've decided you'll do, the memory of the metal doesn't leave. Your ankles are raw, skin broken into sores that stick to cloth, reopening every time you move. Infection sets in quickly in this heat, the wounds festering, smelling faintly of rot. The guards see it. They don't care. Shackles aren't about security. They're about control. About teaching you that your body isn't yours to command anymore. The noise is another punishment. Chains rattle every time you shift, every time you breathe too deeply. You can't move silently, can't forget what's wrapped around you. The sound follows you into half sleep, echoing in dreams until you wake convinced the cuffs have grown tighter, the weight heavier. It's not just physical, it's psychological. A constant reminder that you're never unobserved, never unbound, never free. Days blur together in chains. You start to measure time, not by meals or light, but by the depth of bruises, the number of times the cuffs are shifted from ankles to wrists and back again. You learn quickly how to sit in one position for hours, because movement means pain. Your muscles stiffen, wasting away, but you can't stretch them without tearing open the skin beneath the shackles. The cell eats your light, and the chains eat your body. Sometimes they fasten you to other prisoners. Two bodies linked by the ankle, forced to move as one, stumbling together because neither has the strength to carry the other. You learn to hate the man beside you, not because of who he is, but because his weakness drags you down and yours drags him. The guards watch, amused, as you collapse together into the mud, the metal biting deeper with every fall. You're not comrades here. You're liabilities chained together for their entertainment. When punishment is the goal, the restraints become even crueler. They force you into stress positions, shackling your hands behind your back and binding them to your ankles so tightly that your chest is forced forward and your lungs can't expand. Breathing becomes shallow, panicked, each inhale a fight. Minutes stretch like hours, and by the time they finally unhook the chains, your arms are numb, your back screaming, your chest aching from the struggle. They don't care if you collapse face first into the floor. They laugh when you do. The iron never leaves marks that heal clean. The scars layer over each other, raised ridges circling wrists and ankles, mapping every hour you spent locked in metal. Even when the cuffs come off, the ache lingers. Your body remembers the weight. Phantom chains rattling in your ears long after silence returns. You scratch at your skin, convinced the metal is still there, even when it isn't. And soon enough, it always is again. At night, the shackles cut deeper. You curl on the mat, the cuffs pressing into bone, and every time you shift, the chain clinks, echoing in the silence until you wonder if the sound is only in your head. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by pain, by itching, by the constant pressure of steel that feels heavier than your entire body. Dreams dissolve into the sensation of being bound, into images of locks clicking shut, into the metallic taste of fear you can't swallow down. You think of freedom differently now, not as open skies or running water or home-cooked meals. Freedom becomes the absence of weight on your limbs, the ability to stand without metal cutting into your skin, the silence of moving without chains. But those moments never last. And the longer you stay bound, the harder it is to remember what it felt like to move unrestrained at all. Heat is everywhere. It seeps into your skin, into your lungs, into the walls themselves until the cell feels less like a room and more like the inside of an oven left to bake slowly, endlessly. The air doesn't move. Not even a whisper of wind slips through the tiny barred window, and even if it did, it would only bring more of the same, heavy and wet, pressing down on you until breathing feels like dragging soup into your chest. Sweat never stops. It pours from your scalp, drips into your eyes, runs down your back in steady rivulets that soak your clothes until the fabric clings so tightly it feels like part of your body. The mat beneath you becomes damp, then soggy, then foul, as moisture and filth blend into a sour stench that rises with every shift of your body. There's no drying out, no relief, only the cycle of sweating, soaking and stewing in your own heat. You try to find cooler spots in the cell, pressing your face against the wall, but the concrete radiates warmth like it's alive. The floor offers no help either. Lying flat only smears your body across a surface that's absorbed years of the same sweat, the same breath, the same heat from countless prisoners before you. You sit up, lean, curl, stretch, and nothing works. The heat follows every posture, every angle, unrelenting. Your mouth is always dry, no matter how much of their tepid water you force down. The heat eats it instantly, turning your tongue to leather and your lips to cracked lines that sting with every lick. You dream of cold water, of ice, of the simple relief of air moving across damp skin, but the cell doesn't allow it. The air here is stagnant, thick with ammonia from waste and the tang of rusting iron, a cocktail that chokes more than it nourishes. Nights don't bring relief. Darkness falls, but the heat remains, trapped inside concrete walls that radiate warmth long after the sun disappears. You wake constantly, drenched, mat soaked through. Mosquitoes are feasting on every patch of exposed flesh. Your own body becomes a furnace, radiating heat into a room that has nowhere to send it. You shift, toss, sit upright gasping, but nothing changes. The air is as heavy at midnight as it was at noon. The guards know, of course. Sometimes they make it worse on purpose. They shove extra bodies into a cell already suffocating, doubling the heat, filling the air with the scent of more sweat, more breath, more despair. Each new body steals what little oxygen there is, until everyone is panting shallow, ragged breaths, pressed shoulder to shoulder, drenched in a communal soup of misery. You can't stretch. You can't move without touching someone else. And every shift brings angry murmurs that fade into silence because no one has the energy to fight. Other times, they force you outside into the yard, shackled in direct sunlight with no cover. The ground bakes, heat radiating up from below while the sun pounds down from above, turning you into the meat of a slow roast. The air shimmers, insects buzz, and sweat runs so fast it feels like your body is melting. The guards stand in shade, rifles slung casually, watching you sway on your feet until you collapse. There's no sympathy when you do, only laughter or a sharp kick to the ribs, to remind you you're not allowed the dignity of fainting. The heat changes you. Your skin blisters in places, raw sores forming under cuffs and along the waistband of your uniform. Your body smells different too, sharper, fouler, as sweat and filth mix with infection from wounds that never heal. You itch constantly, but scratching only tears skin further, opening it to the flies that land brazenly and refuse to leave. The worst is the breathing. The air is so thick that every inhale feels incomplete, as if your lungs can't expand fully. You gasp, yawn, pant, searching for a deep breath that never comes. Sometimes you convince yourself there's no oxygen at all, that you're suffocating slowly, your own breath trapped in the same cycle of used air bouncing back at you from the walls. Panic sets in then, faster than hunger, sharper than thirst. Your chest tightens, your vision blurs, and you pound the wall, desperate for air that doesn't exist. The guard's here, but they don't come. The panic belongs to you, and you burn it out in shallow, choking gasps until exhaustion drags you back down. Your mind begins to break under it. You start hallucinating breezes, imagining that the faint stir of insect wings is air moving across your skin. You press your face toward the barred window, straining for the ghost of wind that never arrives. Sometimes, in delirium, you think you feel rain, a cool splash across your scalp, only to realise it's sweat dripping from your own hair. Relief becomes an illusion, a trick your body plays to keep you from giving up completely. You lose track of how many days pass like this. The cell doesn't let you know. The heat stretches time until it's meaningless. You could be sitting in that airless box for a week or a month, and the only difference is how deep the sores on your skin run, how hollow your body feels as weight drops from your frame. The guards offer watery soup, maybe a handful of rice, but the heat strips hunger away too. You eat because you know you'll collapse without it, but the taste is ash, the texture glue, and it only fuels the sweat pouring out of you. Sometimes they take you to interrogation, dragging you through the yard where the sun blinds you after days in dimness. The sudden glare makes you stumble, and the guards laugh as you squint like a mole pulled from the dirt. Even in those moments, you pray they'll keep you outside, under the punishing sun, just for the chance to breathe air that feels fresher than the stagnant soup of your cell. That's how far the heat has twisted you. You beg for punishment just to escape the airless walls for a few minutes. And then they put you back. Always back. Into the same suffocating box that smells of mildew and waste. Into air that hasn't moved in years. Into heat that never fades. The jungle outside may be alive, but in here, the air is dead, heavy, and waiting to kill you slowly, one shallow breath at a time. The cell teaches you silence, but the interrogation room teaches you fear. You don't walk there on your own. You're hauled, shoved, dragged along corridors where the light changes but never softens. Sometimes it's a blinding bulb that burns your eyes after hours in gloom. Other times it's a dim glow that makes the shadows stretch until they seem alive. The guards don't explain where you're going, but you know. Everyone knows. The sound of chains dragging, the bark of boots, the sudden stop in front of a door that looks no different from the rest. That's when your stomach twists, because this is the place where silence breaks. The room is bare, but not empty. A single chair sits in the centre, metal legs scraping across the floor when they shove it toward you. The walls are stained, not freshly, but with the residue of years. Dark blotches, scuffs, streaks that could be dirt or blood or both. The air smells of sweat, smoke, and something chemical, sharp enough to sting the back of your throat. There are no windows, no escape, just the steady hum of a fan that doesn't cool the room so much as move the stench around. They sit you down hard, wrists bound, ankles shackled to the chair legs, so tightly the metal bites bone. One guard holds you in place, while another steps back, waiting. Then he arrives. The one who doesn't carry a rifle, the one who doesn't need to. He wears no uniform, or if he does, it's stripped of insignia. His face is unreadable, neither smiling nor scowling. He looks at you the way a butcher might look at an animal on the block, not with hatred, but with calculation. Questions come first, sharp and fast. Name, rank, unit. The things you've rehearsed, the things you're trained to repeat and nothing more. You give them, your voice cracked and weak, but steady. He doesn't react, just nods slightly, as if ticking boxes on a list. Then the harder questions begin. Mission details, locations, codes. Things you can't say, things you won't. You shake your head, mumble, "I don't know." Cling to silence. That's when the real work starts. The first blow is always sudden. A fist, a baton. Sometimes just the flat of a hand, delivered with enough force to snap your head sideways. Pain blossoms instantly, hot and sharp, followed by the metallic taste of blood in your mouth. There's no pause, no warning. They strike again and again until your vision blurs and the room tilts around you. The questions keep coming, woven between the blows, as if the violence is punctuation. Answer, strike, deny, strike harder. They don't rely on fists alone. The chair itself becomes a weapon. You're tipped backward, weight crashing against the restraints, until your shoulders scream and your breath cuts off. Then you're yanked forward, slammed chest first into the edge of the table, until your ribs feel like they've cracked. Sometimes they leave you tilted at impossible angles, legs bound, back arching painfully, just to watch you struggle for balance you'll never regain. Water comes next, not for drinking, but for drowning. A rag is shoved over your face, soaked until your lungs seize with panic. You thrash, choking, convinced you're dying, until the cloth is ripped away and air rushes back in ragged gasps. Relief lasts seconds before it starts again. Each cycle breaks something inside you. Not just your body, but your certainty that you can endure. The room has other tools too. Cables, used to jolt your body with sharp bursts of electricity that leave your muscles twitching long after the wires are removed. Bamboo rods, slid between fingers and twisted until joints scream. Ropes, used to suspend you from the ceiling by arms wrenched behind your back, shoulders tearing under the weight of your own body. Every method is calculated, designed to push you past the point of resistance without breaking you completely. They don't want you dead. Not yet. Time in here doesn't move the way it should. Minutes stretch into hours. Hours collapse into seconds. You lose track of how many times you've been struck, how many questions have been asked, how many answers you've given. Your body becomes foreign, just a collection of pain signals firing endlessly, while your mind drifts in and out of awareness. You catch fragments, the interrogator's calm voice, the guard's laughter, the sound of your own ragged breathing. Everything else dissolves into haze. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stops. They unlock the shackles, shove you to the floor, leave you gasping in a puddle of sweat and spit. No explanation, no warning. You're dragged back to your cell, tossed onto the mat like discarded clothing. The door slams, and silence returns, heavy and suffocating. You lie there, body trembling, mind racing, wondering when they'll come again, because they always do. The worst part isn't always what happens to you. It's what you hear happening to everyone else. The cell walls are thin enough to leak sound, but thick enough to keep you blind. You don't see who it is. You don't see what they're doing. You just hear it. And your mind fills in the blanks with images worse than anything the eye could endure. It starts with the footsteps. Heavy boots against concrete, echoing down the corridor, stopping, turning, doors clanging open. Sometimes there's shouting first, the guards barking orders in voices sharp enough to cut. Other times it's silence, then a sudden crash, a body hitting the floor, a muffled grunt that swells into something louder. You know the rhythm now. You've learned it in your bones. The sounds always build. The cries come next. Not screams at first, but the guttural noises of men trying not to break. Grunts, gasps, the sound of teeth grinding as someone refuses to give them the satisfaction of a full scream. It never lasts. Sooner or later, the voices rise, strained and desperate, echoing through the walls until every prisoner knows what's happening. A voice breaks high, ragged, begging in a language you might not even recognize. It doesn't matter. Pain sounds the same in every tongue. You sit in the dark and count the minutes, though time means nothing here. A single session can stretch like an entire day. You hear the slap of leather against flesh, the wet crack of wood striking bone, the crash of a chair tipping over. The walls shake with it sometimes, dust drifting down from the ceiling as if the whole prison shudders along with the body inside. And then the voices, strained at first, then shattered, rise into screams so sharp they make your skin prickle. You try not to listen, but you can't stop. The sound forces itself into your head, worming into every thought. You press your palms over your ears, curl into yourself on the mat, bury your head against your knees, but it doesn't help. The cries cut through the concrete, vibrating in your ribs, rattling in your teeth. You hear every note of it, every broken syllable, every sob. You start to imagine faces, names, even when you don't know who it is. Sometimes you recognize a voice, one you passed in the yard, one that tapped on the wall before the guards silenced it forever. That's worse. The silence that follows is heavier than the noise. Sometimes it ends in a sudden cut-off, a scream that stops mid-breath, leaving you wondering whether the man passed out or simply died. Other times it drags into sobs, weak and ragged, until they fade into nothing. Then come the footsteps again, dragging something heavy across the floor, the slam of a door, the scrape of chains. Maybe the body comes back to a cell. Maybe it doesn't. You never know. You only sit there, waiting for the sound to start again. The guards want you to hear it. That's part of the design. They leave doors cracked, slam batons against walls, shout louder than they need to, all to make sure the sound travels. Torture isn't just for the one in the chair. It's for everyone listening in the dark. Everyone waiting for their turn. The fear multiplies, spreads, rots inside you until you're more afraid of the noise than of hunger, thirst, or the chains. At night, the sounds don't stop. You wake to muffled cries drifting down the corridor, sometimes so faint you wonder if you're dreaming. Then the crash comes again, metal against flesh, voice against silence, and you know it's real. You lie there, drenched in sweat, heart racing, listening to the rhythm of someone else's suffering. You tell yourself it isn't you this time, but that's no comfort. It just means it will be you tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after. The sound is a promise, and promises here are always kept. The cries change over time. In the beginning, they're sharp, loud, filled with resistance. Men shout words you can't hear, spit curses at their captors, fight against the breaking. Weeks later, the voices sound different, softer, quicker to collapse, no longer fueled by defiance. The screams become whimpers, then moans, then silence that lasts longer each time. You don't just hear the torture. You hear the breaking of men, slowly, day by day, until there's nothing left in their voices but surrender. You wonder what you sound like when it's your turn. Do you beg? Do you scream? Do the others sit in their cells, listening to you the way you listen to them? The thought makes you sick. but you can't stop imagining it. You replay the last session in your head, trying to remember whether you cried out, whether you gave them the satisfaction. But memory blurs under pain, and all you can recall is the sound, not just yours, but theirs, the guards, laughing while you choked on your own breath. The sound of torture becomes constant, even when it isn't happening. Your ears ring with echoes long after silence returns. You hear screams in the drip of water from the ceiling, in the screech of rusted hinges, in the scuttle of rats across the floor. You wake to phantom cries, your own voice caught in your throat, convinced someone is dying beside you. You listen so hard that silence itself becomes unbearable, because you know it won't last. It never does. Food arrives without ceremony, without dignity, without even the pretense of being nourishment. It comes at irregular times, sometimes twice in a day, sometimes once, sometimes not at all. The guards don't explain. They slide a dented tin bowl through the slot in the door, or shove it into your shackled hands, and that's it. The meal is an afterthought, a routine meant to keep you alive just enough, never more. The portion is small, always small. A scoop of rice that looks more like paste than grain, clumped together in a wet mound that smells faintly of mildew. Sometimes it's floating in water, thin and cloudy, where a few stray vegetable leaves drift like wreckage. On rare days, you find a shred of meat, too tough to chew, gristly and sour, a scrap that might be fish or rat or something you'd rather not identify. Most of the time, it's just the rice, tasteless and sticky, with a texture that turns to glue on your tongue. The bowl itself is filthy. It's been used countless times, washed rarely if ever. Its edges stained with old food, crusted so hard it will never come off. The tin is dented and sharp in places, cutting your lips if you aren't careful. You lick it clean anyway, dragging your tongue along the metal to scrape every last grain, because you know the guards will take it back empty whether you're finished or not. Hunger makes the food taste like something, even when it shouldn't. The first few bites are swallowed quickly, your body desperate for fuel, but the satisfaction never comes. The rice sits heavy in your stomach, expanding like cement, bloating you without nourishing you. Within an hour, the emptiness returns, sharper than before, a hollow ache that spreads from your gut to your chest, up into your throat, until it feels like your entire body is nothing but appetite. Sometimes they bring soup instead, if you can call it that. It's water-tinted grey, with a thin film of oil shimmering on top. A cabbage leaf drifts in it like a corpse on a river. You scoop it up eagerly, sucking it between your teeth, chewing until your jaw aches even though there's nothing in it worth chewing. On good days, you might find a few beans at the bottom, swollen and mushy. On bad days, there's nothing but grit, dirt from the pot sticking between your teeth, crunching like sand. The smell of food is worse than the taste. The soup carries an odour that turns your stomach. Rancid fat, overboiled vegetables. Something sour that lingers on your breath long after you've swallowed. But you eat anyway. There's no choice. Hunger doesn't care what the food smells like. Hunger doesn't care if it's rotten. Hunger demands, and you obey. You start to notice how the guards eat. They don't hide it. They sit in the yard with their bowls piled high, steaming rice, fried meat, fresh vegetables glistening with oil. The smell wafts into your cell, torturing you more effectively than fists ever could. You sit there, holding your watery rice, staring at the dented tin, and the scent of their meal makes your mouth flood until it hurts. You hate them, but you hate yourself more for salivating like a dog at the scraps you'll never get. The portions shrink as weeks turn into months. Your body shrinks with them. Fat disappears first, melting away until your clothes hang loose on your frame. Then muscle follows, your arms thinning, your legs trembling when you try to stand. Bones press against skin, sharp and alien, as if your skeleton is trying to escape. Wounds don't heal. Infections spread. Hair falls out in clumps when you run your fingers through it. Hunger doesn't just live in your stomach anymore. It spreads through your entire body, carving you down day by day. Meals are no longer events. They're calculations. How slowly can you eat this handful of rice to trick your stomach into believing it's more than it is? How carefully can you ration each grain so that the bowl lasts 10 minutes instead of 5? You roll the rice between your tongue and teeth, swallow small, drink water to stretch it out, but it never works. Your body knows. The hunger always returns. The worst days are when they don't bring anything at all. No bowl, no scoop, no soup. You wait, listening for footsteps, for the scrape of tin against the floor, but nothing comes. Hours stretch into night, and your stomach knots so tightly you double over, clutching it with bound hands as if pressure will fill the emptiness. You try to sleep, but sleep won't come. Hunger gnaws louder than any noise, a constant reminder that you're fading. When food finally does arrive the next day, you devour it too quickly, and your stomach revolts, cramping, purging, leaving you weaker than before. And then there are the times they mock you with food. Guards eating just outside your cell, smacking their lips loudly, tossing scraps onto the ground where you can see them but not reach. A scrap of meat, a crust of bread, just out of reach of your shackled arms. They laugh when you stretch for it, when you scrape your nails against the floor, trying to drag it closer. Sometimes they kick it into the dirt, grind it under their boots, then leave it there, rotting where you can smell it but never taste. You think about food constantly, not just meals you miss, but details so small they hurt to remember. The crunch of an apple, the snap of a cracker, the warmth of bread fresh from an oven. You remember butter melting, gravy soaking into mashed potatoes, bacon spitting in a pan. These aren't luxuries. They're torture now. Memories so vivid they might as well be hallucinations. You close your eyes and chew on nothing, your mouth watering as your teeth grind air. The cell is empty, but your mind fills it with banquets you'll never eat. Sometimes prisoners whisper to each other about food. Not codes, not plans, just recipes. One man recites how to roast a turkey, step by step, describing the smell of stuffing, the crispness of the skin, the sweetness of cranberry sauce. Another murmurs about pies, about crusts and fillings, about the sound of a fork breaking into one. The guards don't understand why men talk like this, but you do. Food is hope, even when it's imaginary. It's the last reminder that somewhere beyond these walls, people still eat like human beings. But the meals here aren't meant to remind you of humanity. They're meant to erase it. The food keeps you alive, but just barely, stretching your suffering into months, years, without ever letting you regain strength. You're never satisfied, never full, never free of hunger's ache. It's another shackle, another form of control. You can resist questions, resist blows, resist chains, but you can't resist hunger. Hunger always wins. Hunger gnaws at you, but thirst is worse. Hunger leaves you hollow, weak, trembling, but first burns. It scratches at your throat like sandpaper. It swells your tongue until it feels too big for your mouth. It dries your lips into cracked ridges that bleed when you try to lick them. Hunger fades into a dull ache you can almost ignore. Thirst screams. It keeps you awake, keeps you desperate, keeps you clawing at the edges of sanity. The water comes irregularly, just like the food. Sometimes once a day, sometimes not at all. Sometimes so late your body has already stopped sweating because there's nothing left to give. They bring it in tin cups, battered and dented, sloshing with warm liquid that barely resembles water. It's cloudy, flecked with dirt, sometimes with bits of leaves or insects floating on the surface. You stare at it like it's salvation. But when you drink, the taste is foul, metallic, sour, sometimes rancid enough to gag. You don't stop. You swallow every drop, even when your stomach cramps in protest, because the alternative is worse. The guards know exactly what they're giving you. Sometimes the water is drawn from a filthy barrel and it smells like mould, sometimes from a bucket left uncovered where mosquitoes swarm and breed. On cruel days, it's been sitting in the sun so long it tastes like hot tin. You gag, but you drink. Thirst makes you swallow anything. The human body can last weeks without food. Without water, it's days. They know this. They make sure you never quite die, but never truly live either. Your throat grows so dry that swallowing becomes painful. You wake in the night with your tongue glued to the roof of your mouth, scraping it free like peeling off dried leather. You cough, but no saliva comes, only a harsh rasp that makes your chest ache. You dream of fountains, of ice cubes clinking in glasses, of streams running clear and cold, but you wake to air so hot and heavy it dries you further. The cell eats moisture as quickly as your body does. When they do give water, it's never enough. A few gulps at most, gone in seconds. You learn to sip slowly, to hold each drop in your mouth as long as you can, letting your tongue soak it in before swallowing. You ration it, convincing yourself you can stretch 3 swallows into 10. It never works. The first always comes roaring back, sharper for having been teased. Sometimes they deny water as punishment. After interrogation, after a beating, after you collapse in the yard, they leave you dry. Your lips crack deeper. Your head throbs with a pounding that never stops. Your vision swims. You try to wet your lips with spit, but there isn't any. You chew on your tongue, hoping for moisture, but all you taste is blood. You suck on your fingers, even when they're filthy, just to feel something wet. You lick the damp walls, scrape mould into your mouth, lap at the puddles that form when rain leaks through the roof. You know it's poison, but thirst doesn't care. You drink anyway. The guards laugh when they catch you. They kick the puddle away, spit into your cup before handing it back. Pour water onto the dirt in front of your cell while you watch helplessly. Sometimes they bring clear water and set it just beyond your reach, leaving you shackled, forcing you to crawl, strain, beg. You never reach it. They always tip it over, soaking the ground, letting it vanish into mud while you stare, throat burning, body screaming. Your urine darkens, turning thick and foul, burning as it leaves your body. Sometimes days pass when nothing comes out at all, your body holding on to every drop, wringing itself dry. Your skin cracks, lips splitting, eyes red and swollen. You stop sweating, which should bring relief in the heat, but it doesn't. It just means your body has nothing left to give, no defence against the furnace of the cell. Fever takes over, confusion sets in, and your mind drifts in and out of delirium. The thirst changes your thoughts. Food no longer matters. Pain no longer matters. You think only of water. You imagine breaking free, stumbling into the jungle, pressing your face into a stream and drinking until you drown. You picture ice melting on your tongue, rain pouring over your face, a cold glass sweating in your hand. The fantasies are so vivid you can taste them, feel them, smell them, until the guards return and shove the reality back into your hands. A warm cup of filth that you drink as if it were holy. You realise thirst is the perfect weapon. Hunger weakens you. Chains restrain you. Beatings terrify you. But thirst rules you. It makes you crawl. It makes you beg. It makes you betray your body just to stop the burning in your throat. And they use it because they know you can resist questions, you can endure pain, but you cannot live without water. You notice them before you see them. The itching starts first. A prickling on your ankles, your arms, the back of your neck. At first you think it's sweat drying, or maybe a rash from the shackles rubbing raw skin. But then something moves. Tiny legs scramble across your flesh, and you realise you're not alone in this cell, not by a long shot. The walls are alive with them. Ants march in endless black lines, slipping through cracks in the concrete, vanishing into holes too small for your fingers. They crawl across your mat, your legs, into the corners where scraps of food have long since rotted into a sticky film. You swipe at them with bound hands, crushing a few, but more arrive instantly. No matter how many you kill, their numbers never shrink. You start to feel them even when they're not there. Phantom legs skittering across your skin until you're scratching yourself raw. Mosquitoes are constant, humming in your ears at all hours. They slip through the bars of the window, through gaps in the roof, through holes you can't even see. They hover over you as you try to sleep, landing on your cheeks, your arms, the tender skin between your fingers. You slap until your skin stings, until blood smears beneath your nails, but they always return. The bites swell into red welts that itch until you can't think, until you scrape them against the wall hard enough to bleed, just for the brief relief of pain instead of itch. Infection follows, every welt a festering wound that never heals in the humid heat. Then there are the flies. They're bold, buzzing thick in the air, drawn by the smell of waste and sweat and the open sores on your body. They land on your lips, your eyes, crawling across your face with no fear. You spit, blow air through clenched teeth, shake your head violently, but they return again and again. You wake with them nesting in the corners of your eyes, their tiny bodies tickling against your lashes, and you rub until the skin burns. Sometimes you think you've swallowed them in your sleep, their wings brushing your throat as they slide down. The cell doesn't just belong to insects. Rats scurry through at night, their claws clicking against the floor, their tails dragging across your legs. You hear them before you see them, a sharp squeak, a rustle in the straw mat, and then a sudden weight on your foot as one runs across you. You kick instinctively, but that only makes them bolder. They return, sniffing, gnawing at scraps of rice left behind, even nibbling at the open sores on your ankles if you don't wake in time. You learn quickly to sleep light, jerking awake at the slightest brush of fur, swatting in the dark at creatures that don't fear you anymore. Cockroaches are worse. They swarm in numbers you can't believe, big enough that you hear their shells clicking as they crawl. They come out in waves when the light fades, covering the floor, scaling the walls, darting across your chest as you lie helpless. Their smell is unique, musky, oily, sour, and it fills your nostrils until you can't breathe without gagging. They climb into your tin bowl, your water cup, into your clothes, hiding in folds until you shake them out in panic. You crush them with bare hands, the crunch and burst of fluid making you retch, but there are always more, always waiting. Sometimes the guards use them as punishment. They leave food scraps near your mat on purpose, knowing it will draw rats and roaches in droves. They enjoy watching you flinch and swat, laugh when you panic as a rat scurries across your chest, smirking as you curl into a ball while cockroaches rain down from the ceiling beams. On cruel days, they even toss handfuls of insects into your cell, watching them scatter across your body as you thrash helplessly. You start to live with them in ways you never thought possible. You brush ants off your skin without flinching, swallow soup with flies floating in it, ignore roaches running across your legs because swatting takes too much energy. Your standards collapse. What once would have made you scream now barely registers as more than another layer of misery. You share your meals with vermin, share your mat, share your wounds. They feed on you, and you exist with them because there's no other option. The itching never stops. Your skin is covered in bites, sores, scratches, each one infected from constant picking. Scabs form and are torn away again and again, leaving raw flesh beneath. Flies gather around the wounds, laying eggs that hatch into tiny maggots riding in the heat. You feel them moving, burrowing deeper, and you scrape at your skin desperately, tearing until blood flows just to get them out. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you don't. You live with the knowledge that parts of you are being eaten alive from the outside in. At night, when you close your eyes, you hear the scuttling. Tiny claws against stone, wings buzzing near your ear, the click of mandibles snapping shut. You slap at yourself, convinced they're crawling under your clothes, into your mouth, your nose, your ears. Sleep is impossible. You drift only in short bursts, jerking awake to the sensation of movement that may be real or imagined. In the darkness, the insects become larger, louder, until you're convinced the cell itself is breathing, crawling, alive. The vermin aren't just torment. They're another weapon. The guards don't need to beat you when the bugs can do it for them. They don't need to starve you when rats steal the few grains of rice you're given. They don't need to isolate you when roaches whisper across the floor at night, filling silence with scratching. The insects and vermin are part of the prison, as constant as the heat, as cruel as the chains. They make sure you never rest, never heal, never forget where you are. It doesn't take long for sickness to become part of you. The prison makes it inevitable. You breathe air thick with rot, eat food crawling with bacteria, drink water that tastes of rust and filth, and sleep on a mat soaked with years of sweat and waste. Disease isn't a possibility here. It's the rule. The only uncertainty is how fast it arrives, and how far it takes you before you're too weak to fight it anymore. The stomach goes first. The thinned soup, the rancid scraps of rice, the water scooped from barrels slick with scum. They all rot inside you before they digest. Cramps seize your belly in the night, twisting so violently you double over on the mat, clutching yourself like you're trying to hold your insides in place. Diarrhea follows, endless and violent, leaving you weaker each time. You crawl to the corner of the cell, Leave what your body can't hold, and the stench mixes with everything else already fermenting in the room. The guards don't clean it. You live in it. The smell clings to your skin, your hair, your breath, until you no longer notice it, but others do. The dehydration worsens it. Every bout of sickness drains water from your body, leaving your lips cracked, your eyes sunken, your skin slack. You try to sip slowly when they bring you water, but it runs through you like a broken pipe. The cramps never stop. They hollow you out until your body is little more than bone wrapped in loose skin, trembling under the effort of standing. Then the fevers begin. They come suddenly, burning you alive from the inside. One moment you're shivering, curled into a ball on the mat with your teeth rattling against each other, and the next you're drenched in sweat so hot it scalds. The heat fills your head until your thoughts blur, until you can't separate dreams from waking. You mutter to yourself, cry out without realizing, beg for water, even when a cup sits untouched at your side. The guards hear, but they don't come. Fever isn't their problem. Fever is the prison's work, and the prison never rests. Malaria spreads like smoke. The mosquitoes that hover constantly in your cell carry more than bites and welts. They bring the shivers, the sweats, the headaches so intense you feel your skull might split. You lie there, trembling violently, teeth chattering, then moments later drenched in sweat, hair plastered to your forehead. The cycle repeats endlessly, day after day, until time itself becomes just fever breaking and fever building again. Skin infections cover you in sores. Every bite you scratch, every cut from shackles, every scrape against the rough wall turns septic in the humid air. Wounds ooze pus, swell, redden, and refuse to heal. Flies gather on them, crawling freely across open flesh, laying eggs that hatch into maggots wriggling beneath scabs. You tear at your own skin in desperation, pulling them free, only to leave deeper wounds behind. The guards don't offer medicine. They laugh when you scratch, when you bleed, when you stink so badly even the other prisoners turn away. Lungs weaken next. The air is thick, heavy with mildew, with dust, with a stink of waste. You cough constantly, hacking so hard it feels like your ribs might snap. The cough starts dry, then turns wet, each spasm rattling in your chest until you spit phlegm streaked with blood. Tuberculosis spreads fast in cells this crowded, each breath passing the sickness to the next body. You listen at night to the chorus of coughing all around you, men hacking in unison, every fit ending in groans. The sound never stops. It becomes the rhythm of the prison, the only song anyone remembers. The body weakens, but the mind doesn't escape sickness either. Fever burns away reason, leaving hallucinations behind. You see things in the corners of the cell, shapes that vanish when you blink. You hear voices calling your name, voices of family, of friends, of people long gone. You answer sometimes, whispering into the darkness, only to realize you're talking to no one. The guards hear that too. They laugh when you ramble, when you beg ghosts for water, when you cry out for people who can't come. And the lice, they infest you until every inch of your body crawls. They live in your hair, in the seams of your rags, burrowing into your scalp until you scratch bloody furrows into your skin. They bite at night, swarming across your neck, your chest, your groin, feeding until you wake raw and itching. You pick them out one by one, crush them between your nails, watch the smear of blood they leave behind, and know it's yours. You kill hundreds, but there are always more, always crawling, always feeding. The endless sickness isn't dramatic. It doesn't kill quickly. It's slow, grinding, patient. It wastes you down piece by piece, stripping away weight, strength, dignity. You stop standing straight. Stop lifting your head. You move like an old man, even though you're not old. You shuffle when you walk. Tremble when you squat. Collapse when you try to rise. Every action is a battle against your own body, and your body is losing. You already know what sickness feels like. The cramps, the fevers, the coughs that don't stop. Your body wastes away, and the prison does nothing to help it. But then, on certain days, the guards decide to show you what they call medicine. You learn quickly that what they mean by medicine isn't healing, isn't care, isn't mercy. It's another form of control, another tool of humiliation, another stage in the long routine of breaking you down. The first thing you notice is how little they actually look at you. You're dragged into a different room, not clean, not sterile, just another space with peeling paint, a stained cot, maybe a single light bulb hanging low enough to buzz in your ears. They don't call it a clinic. You wouldn't recognise it as one if they did. There are no shelves of supplies, no nurses moving quickly with bottles and gauze. There's only a man, sometimes in a white coat, sometimes not, who carries himself as if he were trained, but never acts like it. They sit you down hard, force your chin up, pull at your shirt to expose skin already covered in sores. They don't wash their hands. They don't disinfect their instruments. They poke, they prod, they press until you flinch. And then they write something down or bark at the guards as if your suffering were nothing but a note on a list. You want to believe they're here to help, but the first touch tells you otherwise. Medicine becomes punishment. They jab needles into your arm with no warning, no explanation, and the liquid inside burns as it spreads. Sometimes it's a vaccine. Sometimes it's a sedative. Sometimes it's nothing at all, water or saline pushed into your veins just to remind you they can. The needles aren't clean, they've been used before, dull tips tearing through your skin instead of piercing it, leaving bruises that bloom into black circles. Infections follow, swelling your arm until it throbs with heat, but when you complain, they laugh. Pills come in small chalky handfuls. White tablets dropped into your palm or onto the floor in front of you. They don't tell you what they are. Aspirin, quinine, antibiotics, poison. You can't tell. You swallow them anyway because the guard is watching. Because refusing means a strike across the face. Because you're too weak to fight. Sometimes the pills do nothing. Sometimes they make you vomit until your stomach is empty again. Sometimes they knock you into a haze so deep you forget where you are until you wake hours later, soaked in sweat, still sick, still chained, still here. Bandages are rare, but when they appear, they're already dirty. A strip of cloth pulled from a drawer, stiff with old blood, wrapped clumsily around an open wound. It doesn't stop the infection. It feeds it. The flies still gather, crawling under the edges, laying eggs in the damp warmth. You peel the bandage away days later, gagging at the smell, only to find the wound worse than before. That's medicine here, making sickness spread under the pretense of helping. On crueler days, they use the excuse of treatment to inflict pain. They pry at your sores with metal tools, scraping until blood runs, claiming they're cleaning it. They press their fingers into swollen joints, twisting until you cry out, then tell you to be quiet. They pour alcohol over gashes, not to disinfect, but to watch you writhe. the line between healing and torture disappears completely. You stop hoping for medicine. You start fearing it. Some prisoners break under this. They beg for medicine, plead for help when the fever spikes or the cough fills their mouth with blood, only to be mocked with useless pills or brutal exams. Others refuse it outright, spitting the tablets onto the floor when the guards turn away, hiding bandages under the mat so the infection can at least follow its own course instead of theirs. You don't know which is worse, taking the mockery of medicine or denying yourself the sliver of hope it might. Just once, be real. You learn the truth. Medicine isn't for you. It's for them. It's a display. Something they can point to when outsiders ask. Proof they're keeping prisoners alive. They bring in cameras sometimes, line you up in the yard, hand out bottles of pills and bowls of soup, snapping photographs of men swallowing carefully measured doses. You smile weakly, pretend gratitude, because you've been ordered to, because you know what happens if you don't. Then the cameras leave, the bottles vanish, and the sickness continues unchecked. When death comes, medicine doesn't stop it. A man wastes away on the mat beside you, coughing blood until he can't lift his head. The guards drag him out, dump him in the so-called clinic, and return hours later without him. They say nothing. They bring no body back. The sickness ends only because the body is gone. That's medicine too, in this place. A removal, a disappearance, a silence that fills the air heavier than any cough. And still, your body begs for it. Fever makes you hope that maybe this time the pills will work. Pain makes you believe the needle might carry something that will finally numb it. Infection makes you desperate enough to accept the filthy bandage, the rough hands, the sharp sting of alcohol. You know it's a mockery, but you cling to it anyway, because the alternative is to accept there is no healing here at all. The endless sickness grinds you down, and the mockery of medicine grinds you further. It teaches you that care is an illusion, that help can be cruelty, that survival means enduring not just the absence of treatment, but the insult of its false promise. The cell is bad enough when you can hear others through the walls. The coughing, the groaning, the faint tapping that lets you know you're not the only one still alive. But isolation strips even that away. It isn't an accident. It's deliberate. The guards decide when silence is part of your punishment, and when they do, the silence becomes a weapon sharper than any blade. They move you without warning. You're hauled to your feet, wrists bound, ankles hobbled, and dragged through the corridor. The usual cells pass by, the ones where you've memorized every cough and whisper, until you're shoved into a different wing. Here, the doors are heavier, the walls thicker, the air even staler than before. The guards slam the door behind you, and in an instant the world goes quiet. It's not real quiet. Not the kind you find in open fields or empty rooms at home. This silence is suffocating, heavy, pressing against your ears until you swear you can hear your own blood moving. The first thing you notice is the absence. No coughing, no footsteps, no voices. Just you, your breath, and the faint buzz of insects somewhere beyond the walls. Even the guards' footsteps fade away until you're left in a void that feels endless. The days lose their rhythm quickly. You can't tell morning from night without the small cues you used to rely on. The coughs that rose at dawn, the clatter of bowls gliding down corridors, the shouts of guards changing shifts. Here, nothing marks the passage of time. Light barely enters through the tiny barred window, and when it does, it's so weak you can't tell whether it's sunrise or sunset. Darkness arrives without ceremony, smothering the space until you're left with only your thoughts. At first, you talk to yourself. A whisper, a mutter, just to hear a voice. Any voice, even your own. You recite your name, your rank, the things you used to cling to in interrogation. You repeat the names of your family, one after another, as if saying them out loud will tether them to you. You hum snatches of songs, whisper prayers, anything to break the silence pressing down on you. But after hours, after days, your voice sounds strange, hollow, echoing too loudly in the small cell. You stop, afraid of hearing yourself anymore. The silence grows heavier when your body starts to betray you. Hunger gnaws, thirst burns, sickness lingers, but here every sound your body makes is magnified. The growl of your stomach echoes in the walls. The rasp of your breath sounds like shouting. The pounding of your heart keeps you awake. You scratch at your skin just to hear the noise, clawing until blood rises, but it fades too quickly. You slap the walls with your palms, scream until your throat is raw, but no one answers. The silence swallows every attempt and throws nothing back. It's not that the prison is empty. You know there are others somewhere. You imagine them only a few feet away, separated by stone, enduring the same silence. But imagination doesn't help. You can't hear them. You can't reach them. The silence is a barrier more solid than chains, and it isolates you more completely than distance ever could. Time twists in isolation. Without sound, without light, your mind loses its anchor. You sleep at odd intervals, waking with no idea whether you've been unconscious for minutes or hours. Sometimes you think whole days have passed, but when the guards finally open the door, the light outside looks no different. You count breaths, heartbeats, scratches on the wall, but numbers slip through your fingers like water. You start to lose track of yourself, of who you were before the silence. Memories fade faster here. Faces blur, names slip, voices grow faint. You try to summon your family, their features, their smiles, but the silence distorts them. You remember your mother's eyes, but not their colour. You remember your father's laugh, but not the sound. You remember your child's hand in yours, but not the warmth. The silence erases them piece by piece, until you wonder if they ever existed at all, or if you invented them to keep yourself from going mad. Hallucinations come next. The silence tricks your ears into hearing what isn't there. Footsteps pacing outside your door, whispers floating through the cracks, music drifting from nowhere. You strain to catch the words, convinced someone is trying to speak to you. But when you press your ear to the wall, nothing remains. Sometimes you hear your name, clear as if spoken in your ear, and you whip your head around only to see emptiness. The silence isn't passive anymore. It's alive, playing games with your mind. Your body begins to unravel with your mind. Muscles waste away from disuse. Joints stiffen, sores spread unchecked. You pace the cell in circles just to feel movement, but the silence makes each step sound like thunder until you stop, terrified of your own noise. You sit for hours, motionless, until your legs cramp and your back knots into pain. You curl into yourself, listening to the silence, waiting for something, anything, to break it. Sometimes the guards do, but only to remind you that the silence belongs to them. They slam the door suddenly, the crash so loud it shakes you to your bones. They rattle the chains, bang their rifles against the bars, laugh when you flinch violently. Then they leave again, restoring the silence. Heavier now because it's laced with fear. You jump at every creak, every buzz of an insect, every scrape of your own nails against the wall, convinced the next sound will be theirs. Food arrives irregularly, but the silence makes it worse. The bowl scrapes across the floor with a screech that pierces the void, and for a moment you're grateful just to hear it. Then it's gone again, and you're left chewing paste in quiet so absolute you hear every grind of your teeth. You swallow loudly, gulping water in ragged gasps, embarrassed by the sound of your own survival. You begin to crave noise more than food, more than water, more than sleep. You would give anything to hear a conversation, a cough, even a scream from the interrogation room. Anything to prove that life still exists beyond these walls. The silence makes you forget. It convinces you you're the last man alive, buried in a tomb no one remembers. And then, when you think you can't bear it anymore, the silence begins to sound like something after all. A low hum, constant and deep, vibrating in your ears until you can't tell if it's the walls or your own brain. You tap your head, slap your ears, press your palms against your temples, but it doesn't go away. It grows louder, building into a roar of nothingness that drowns out thought itself. You lie on the mat, clutching your skull, screaming to make it stop. But the silence swallows even that. This is isolation. Not just being alone, but being erased. The silence doesn't just surround you. It consumes you, one memory, one sound, one thought at a time. You don't resist it. You can't. You only endure, waiting for the next sound. Even if it's the sound of torture. Even if it's the sound of your own suffering. Because anything is better than the silence that threatens to erase you completely. The first thing that strikes you isn't the darkness or the silence, but the smell. It's always been there, a constant background stench of sweat, mildew, waste and sickness. But one day it changes, it sharpens, it thickens. It turns into something heavier that clings to your nostrils and refuses to leave. You know it instantly, even though you don't want to admit it. The cell reeks of death. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It seeps in, faint at first, as if carried on a draught from somewhere deeper in the prison. A sour edge to the already rotten air. A note so sharp it makes you gag before you can stop yourself. You breathe shallowly, hoping it will fade, but it only grows stronger with each hour. Soon it fills the cell, coating your tongue, crawling down your throat until it feels like you're swallowing the very rot itself. The smell comes from bodies, and there's no mistaking it. You've smelled infection before, and the sour sweet odour of pus leaking from wounds. You've smelled your own filth, the stink of sweat soaked into rags never washed. But this is different. It's the final smell, the last thing a body gives off when it stops fighting and begins to break down. It's the smell of prisoners who didn't wake up from fever, who didn't survive the coughs, who didn't endure the interrogations. Sometimes the smell comes from the cell next to yours. You don't hear coughing anymore, no whispers, no shifting on the mat, just silence that's quickly replaced by the sickly sweetness of rot. You pound on the wall, whisper a name you never knew, hoping for an answer, but none comes. Hours pass, the smell thickens, and eventually the guards drag the body away, leaving behind a mat darker than before, and a smell that doesn't leave with it. You breathe it in for days afterwards, long after the cell is occupied by someone new. Other times, the smell drifts from the corridor itself. It lingers after punishments, after beatings that ended harder than intended, after interrogations where someone didn't come back. The guards leave the body for hours, sometimes longer, as if to make the rest of you inhale the warning. You gag, you retch until your stomach is empty, but there's no escaping it. The air is heavy, stagnant, and the rot hangs in it like smoke. You try to get used to it. You press your face into your rags, breathe through cloth dampened with water, but it doesn't help. The stench seeps into the fabric, into your hair, into your skin. You carry it with you, even when you're dragged outside. The smell of death clinging so tightly you wonder if you reek of it too. Maybe you do. Maybe everyone here smells of decay. Still alive, but marked already, waiting their turn to join the rot. Flies multiply when the smell comes. They swarm thicker, buzzing against the walls, landing on your sores, crawling into your mouth when you're too weak to swat them away. You slap at them blindly, cursing the way they feast on you while hovering back toward the true source of their banquet. The smell and the flies go together, proof that something nearby has stopped moving, stopped breathing, stopped resisting. The guards don't flinch at the smell. They walk through it like it's nothing, laugh as you gag, mock your weakness for reacting. Some even seem to enjoy it, standing near the cell doors, sniffing exaggeratedly, telling you in sharp voices that this is your future too. They know what the stench does to you. They know it makes death more real than chains or blows. You can fight hunger. You can endure thirst. But you can't argue with the smell of a body giving up. At night it's worse. The heat thickens the air, carrying the rot deeper into every corner of the cell. You lie awake, breathing through your mouth, tasting the sweetness of it on your tongue, unable to escape. The smell enters your dreams, warping them until every face you remember is tinged with the odour of decay, every memory haunted by the knowledge that even those you love will end the same way. You wake gasping, clawing at your chest, but the smell is still there. It never leaves. Sometimes you wonder if it's you. You check your sores, sniff your rags, press your nose against your skin, terrified you're already rotting while still alive. Infection makes you stink, makes you ooze pus that smells foul, and you can't tell where your decay ends and someone else's begins. You start to believe you're already dead, lying here decomposing, the guards playing some cruel trick by keeping your mind awake as your body rots. The smell becomes a kind of language. You know when someone nearby is dying by how sharp it gets, how it shifts from sour to sweet to something rancid and metallic. You know when the guards haven't bothered to remove a body yet. You know when sickness is spreading because the whole corridor reeks thicker than before. It becomes a clock, a calendar, a way of measuring time not in days or nights, but in how long it takes for the smell of one death to fade into the smell of the next. You start to crave fresh air more than food, more than water, not because you believe it will heal you, but because you're desperate to breathe something other than rot. Even the jungle, with its stink of mud and mildew, would be heaven compared to this. You dream of the scent of rain, of grass, of clean sweat, of soap, of anything not tainted by death. But you wake and the cell reeks, and you know the only way to smell anything different is to stop breathing altogether. It breaks you slowly, the way all things here do. Not with shock, but with constancy. The smell doesn't fade. It lingers, clings, seeps into your pores, until you stop gagging and start accepting, until one day you realise you've stopped noticing it, and that's worse than gagging ever was. Because it means the prison has won. It means you've accepted rot as normal, death as ordinary, decay as life. Work in this place isn't about productivity. It's not about building anything, fixing anything, or creating something of value. It's about breaking you in a new way, grinding down whatever strength your body has left, exhausting you so fully that resistance feels impossible. The guards call it labour, but it's punishment disguised as routine. You're dragged from the cell, shackled, and shoved into the yard with the others, each of you already trembling before the day has even begun. The tasks change, but the purpose doesn't. Sometimes you're given a shovel with a handle splintered from years of use and ordered to dig a trench in the packed dirt. The ground is so hard it might as well be stone, your weakened arms too frail to pierce it. You strike again and again, the metal blade bouncing back, the effort jolting through your bones until your wrists ache and your shoulders throb. You're shouted at for being slow, for being useless, for pausing even to wipe the sweat blinding your eyes. When you falter, a rifle butt finds your back, and you stumble forward into the dirt, gasping, before they force you to rise and start again. Other days there's no shovel, just your hands, bare and raw, ordered to move piles of rocks from one corner of the yard to another, then back again for no reason at all. The stones cut your palms open, sharp edges splitting skin until blood slicks across them. Dust rises into your lungs, clogging your throat, making every cough burn. You crouch, lift, stagger forward, and drop them where they tell you, only to be ordered to pick them up again and carry them somewhere else. There is no goal, no finished task, only the endless repetition of effort designed to drain you until you collapse. Wood hauling is another favourite. Thick logs cut from the jungle, waterlogged and heavier than they should be, dragged into the yard and dumped at your feet. You're ordered to lift, to shoulder the weight, to stumble across the yard while guards laugh at your shaking legs. The logs dig into your collarbone, bruising it purple, pressing so deep you wonder if bone will crack. You fall more often than you succeed, and each fall earns a kick to the ribs, a curse shouted in your ear, another demand to get up and carry. The work isn't about moving logs. It's about watching you buckle under them. Sometimes they make you squat in the heat, hands bound, balancing stones on your thighs while you tremble under the strain. If the stones slip, if you tip over, if your knees touch the ground, the punishment comes quick and sharp. You learn to hold still longer than your body thinks possible. Muscles shaking violently, sweat pouring down your face, your breath ragged and shallow. Time stretches until the only thing you can hear is the pounding of your own blood in your ears. When the guards finally allow you to drop the stones, your legs give out completely, and you collapse into the dirt. That collapse is exactly what they wanted. The heat makes it worse. The sun beats down mercilessly while you labour, cooking your body from above, while the dirt radiates heat from below. You sweat until you can't anymore, your body drained, lips cracked, tongue swollen. The guards sip from their canteens in front of you, tilting them back slowly, letting the water glisten in the light while you keep working. If you stop to beg, you're struck. If you faint, they dump a bucket of water over your head to revive you, but not to drink. Just enough to drag you back into motion. Work detail isn't limited to the yard. Sometimes they march you into the jungle, shackles clinking, guards prodding you forward with rifles. There you're forced to cut bamboo with dull machetes, hacking for hours at stalks that seem endless. Your hands blister, your back aches from bending, and the bamboo slices back at you, sharp edges cutting into your skin until blood mixes with sweat. The guards pile the stalks high, forcing you to carry them in bundles heavier than your wasted frame can manage. You stumble through mud, feet sinking deep, bamboo digging into your shoulders, biting at your neck, leaving welts across your chest. Other times the work is building, or pretending to. They shove bricks at you, demand you stack them into walls that will never stand, then knock them down again, just to watch you repeat the process. You lift, carry, place, sweat pouring down, vision blurring, while guards mock your progress. There's no end, no structure, no point. When you collapse, the wall collapses too, bricks scattering into the dirt, and the cycle begins again. The worst work is cleaning, not because it's heavy, but because it's demeaning. You're forced to scrub latrines with bare hands, to shovel waste out of pits, to carry buckets sloshing with filth across the yard. The smell is overwhelming, gagging you until you vomit, but the guards don't allow pauses. They laugh as you retch, order you to pick it back up, slap you if you spill a drop. By the end, the stench covers you so completely that even your own skin disgusts you. You wipe your hands on your rags, on the dirt, on the walls, but it never leaves. You carry it back to the cell, sleep in it, breathe it until it becomes part of you. Work details stretch for hours, sometimes all day, sometimes through the night when the guards are feeling cruel. Your body breaks under the strain. Blisters turn to open wounds, muscles seize, joints swell until you can barely bend them. Your back hunches permanently. Your knees grind painfully with every step. You age years in weeks, your body wasting faster under the endless demand for labour. And still the guards shout for more. Prisoners collapse often during work. Some faint from the heat, others from hunger, others from wounds that finally give way. When they fall, the guards don't help. Sometimes they kick them until they stagger upright again. Sometimes they leave them lying in the dirt for hours, bodies baking in the sun, groaning softly until silence comes. Then the body is dragged away, the work continuing as if nothing happened. You watch, but you can't stop, because pausing earns you the same fate. The work never waits for anyone. The humiliation is part of it too. The guards mock your weakness, laugh at the way your arms tremble, slap your head when you stumble under the weight of logs. They order you to sing while you work, voices hoarse and broken, songs collapsing into coughs while they howl with laughter. Sometimes they make you race each other with rocks or bamboo, stumbling and falling while they bet cigarettes on who will collapse first. You're not prisoners in these moments, you're entertainment. Even when the work ends, it doesn't really end. You stagger back to the cell, muscles screaming, skin raw, hands split open, and collapse onto the mat. But rest doesn't restore you. The aches linger, the blisters burn, the bruises swell deeper. You sleep fitfully, twitching as if you're still lifting, still carrying, still moving rocks from one pile to another. Your body never escapes the work, even when the guards do. And when morning comes, it begins again. The blows never have a reason. At least, not one you can understand. They don't come because you spoke out, or because you resisted, or because you broke a rule. They come because they can, because this place runs on the constant reminder that your body doesn't belong to you anymore. The guards don't need justification. They only need opportunity, and opportunities are endless. Sometimes it happens in the yard. You're shuffling under the weight of bamboo or rocks, sweat stinging your eyes, when a guard decides you're too slow. The rifle butt slams into your ribs before you even see it coming, knocking the air out of your lungs. You crumple, gasping, and another blow lands across your back, sharp enough to make your vision flare white. You stagger upright again, because you know what happens if you don't. You lift the load, trembling, while the laughter echoes around you. Other times it happens in the corridor. You're being marched back to the cell, ankles shackled, wrists bound, when a guard lashes out with a kick to your thigh. The impact sends you sprawling into the wall, shoulder cracking against the stone. The guard shouts something you don't understand, then strikes again, boot to stomach, leaving you curled on the ground. You try to rise, but he steps on your back, grinding your face into the dirt until you choke. Only when he's satisfied does he let you stumble forward, dragging chains behind you. Inside the cell, it can happen for nothing at all. The door slams open without warning. Boots thunder across the floor, and you're dragged upright by the collar of your rags. A fist connects with your jaw, snapping your head back. Another blow drives into your stomach, folding you in half. You collapse, coughing blood onto the floor, while the guards shout and laugh, exchanging kicks to your ribs, like you're nothing more than a sack to practice on. When they leave, the silence is worse than the beating, because you know it means they'll be back again, whenever they want. The unpredictability is the weapon. If you knew when the blows were coming, you could brace yourself, prepare, even welcome it just to get it over with. But here, every moment carries the threat. You flinch at footsteps, at keys rattling in locks, at shadows passing under the door. You hold yourself tense, muscles knotted, waiting for the next strike. It doesn't matter if it comes in 5 minutes or 5 hours. The waiting is its own kind of pain. The beatings are never clean. They don't stop with fists or boots. Sometimes they use sticks, bamboo rods that whistle through the air before cracking across your back, leaving stripes that burn for days. Other times it's belts, leather snapping against your skin until welts rise purple and raw. Rifle butts leave deeper damage, bruises that turn black, ribs that crack and grind when you breathe. The guards don't aim carefully. They strike wherever they please. Head, stomach, chest, legs, each blow landing with the same careless cruelty. Your body becomes a canvas of bruises. Purple blooms across your arms, yellowing into sickly green before another strike covers it again. Cuts split open your lips, scabs torn away each time you're hit in the same place. Your ribs ache constantly, sharp with every breath, but you can't tell any more which ones are bruised and which ones are broken. Pain blurs together until it's just another part of you, as familiar as hunger, as constant as thirst. Sometimes the beatings last only a few seconds, a quick burst of violence before the guards move on. Other times they stretch for hours, a rotation of men taking turns, each one striking until sweat drips from their foreheads, then passing you to the next. You lose track of time, drifting in and out of consciousness, body jerking under each blow. When they're finally done, they leave you crumpled on the floor, gasping weakly, unsure whether you'll ever rise again. The humiliation is part of it. They laugh when you cry out, mock you when you curl into a ball, cheer when you collapse completely. They force you to crawl, barking commands like you're an animal, striking whenever you falter. Sometimes they make you kneel for hours afterward, body shaking, head bowed, blood dripping onto the floor. It isn't just about pain. It's about reminding you that you're less than human, that even your suffering belongs to them. Other prisoners endure the same, and you hear it when it isn't your turn. The thud of fists against flesh, the crack of bamboo rods, the guttural cries that echo through the corridor. You press your palms over your ears, but the sound still seeps through, reminding you that no one is spared. You hear a man begging, sobbing, promising anything just to make it stop, and then the dull silence when his voice gives out. You know it will be you next. You know it always circles back. There's no recovering between beatings. The prison doesn't allow time for healing. Bruises overlap, wounds reopen, bones never set properly. You carry yesterday's pain into today, and today's pain into tomorrow, until your entire body is nothing but layers of damage. You move stiffly, slowly, every step an effort, every breath a reminder of cracked ribs, every stretch pulling at torn muscles. And still guards strike, as if you were whole, as if there were anything left to break. The fear changes you. You start to move differently, cautiously, as if tiptoeing through your own body, trying not to draw attention. You keep your eyes down, your voice silent, your posture submissive, hoping it will protect you. It never does. The blows come anyway, random, unpredictable, uncaring. You learn the truth. There's no way to avoid them. The only choice is how you endure them. In time, the beatings carve themselves into your mind as much as your body. You flinch at sudden noises long after silence returns. You dream of fists, of boots, of bamboo rods, waking in a sweat with phantom pain burning across your back. Even in moments when the guards are absent, you feel the weight of their presence, the certainty that violence hovers just outside the door. You're never free of it. You're never safe. You're never unmarked. This is what the beatings teach you. Not discipline, not obedience, not submission. They teach you that pain is permanent, that violence is random, that survival has nothing to do with strength. They teach you that you're not a man anymore. You're a body waiting for the next blow, a target for fists, a sack of bones they can strike whenever boredom strikes them. And the worst part is, you believe it. You begin to see yourself not as a soldier, not as a prisoner, not even as a human being. Just a thing. A thing that can be beaten again and again until nothing is left. Pain is simple. You know when it begins. You know when it ends. You know exactly where it hurts. The mind games are different. They never begin or end cleanly. They seep in slowly, twisting around every thought, every memory, until you can't trust even yourself. The guards don't just want to hurt your body, they want to own your head. And here, in this place where time dissolves and silence eats away at you, their games work better than any chain or blow. It starts with lies. They tell you the war is over. They tell you your side lost, your country surrendered, that there's no one left to fight for you, no reason to hold out. They say your family has forgotten you, that your name isn't remembered back home, that you've already been replaced. Sometimes they laugh while saying it. Sometimes they whisper it gently, as if it were a kindness. The words sink deep either way because there's no way to prove them wrong. The cell gives you no news, no contact, no truth. Lies bloom in the absence of proof, and they know it. Then come the tricks. They bring another prisoner into the yard, someone you think you know, someone who seems familiar, and you cling to them, desperate for connection. But the man says things he shouldn't know, repeats the guard's stories, tells you resistance is useless. You realise too late he isn't a prisoner at all. Just another actor in their game, a plant designed to make you betray yourself. You retreat further into silence, into mistrust, but even then you wonder, what if he was real? What if you just condemned another man by doubting him? The games follow you everywhere. In interrogation they change tactics, alternating cruelty with kindness. One day it's fists, water, bamboo rods. The next it's soft words, a cigarette offered, a hand on your shoulder, a promise that cooperation will bring better treatment. You want to believe it. After weeks of pain, even the smallest kindness feels enormous. You consider answering just once, just a little, just enough to earn a break. But you know the trap. If you give one answer, they'll want two. If you take one cigarette, they'll own you with the next. The kindness is as dangerous as the blows, maybe worse, because it tempts you to betray yourself willingly. Sometimes they take you outside, blindfolded, marching you into the jungle. You stumble over roots, branches whipping your face, your heart pounding in panic. They whisper that this is the end, that they're taking you to be executed. You believe it, every step heavy with the certainty that the last moment is coming. They stop suddenly, shove you to your knees, cock rifles behind your head. You hear the click, the metallic snap that signals death. You wait, trembling, heart hammering so loudly you're sure it will burst. Then nothing. Just silence. Then laughter. They haul you back to camp, blindfold still tight, your body drenched in sweat. It was never about killing you. It was about letting you live with the memory of waiting for death. Sleep becomes their playground. They wake you at odd hours, dragging you out of the cell for questioning, then tossing you back in minutes later. The cycle repeats again and again until you lose all sense of time. You never sleep more than an hour without interruption. You dream of interrogation even while lying on the mat, jolting awake at phantom voices. The guards grin when you stumble into walls, when you collapse mid-sentence, when your mind frays at the edges. They don't need to beat you when exhaustion does the work for them. Isolation itself is part of the game. They leave you alone for days, no sounds, no contact, just silence thick enough to smother thought. Then suddenly they burst in, shouting questions, dragging you to interrogation, demanding answers you can't even process. Your brain struggles to switch from nothing to everything, and in that confusion they slip in lies, planting seeds that grow unchecked in the emptiness. They use hunger too. Sometimes they give you more food than usual. A full bowl of rice, a piece of meat, even a fruit. Your body devours it gratefully, stomach twisting in shock at the sudden abundance. Then the next day they starve you, nothing but water, watching you shake with weakness. The cycle repeats, feast and famine, until you begin to doubt your own hunger. You don't know whether to eat quickly, fearing they'll take it away, or ration carefully, fearing there won't be more. Either way they win. The cruelest games use hope. They tell you letters from home are waiting. They tell you Red Cross officials are coming. They say release is near, that your name is on a list, that your war is over. Sometimes they hand you paper and pen, order you to write a letter to your family. You pour yourself into it, every word a lifeline. every sentence carrying the desperate plea to remember you. When you hand it over, they smile, fold it neatly, and toss it into the fire while you watch. Your words curl into ash, your hope with it. Even your fellow prisoners become part of the game. The guards spread rumours, whispering that someone in the next cell betrayed secrets, someone traded information for food, someone accepted medicine in exchange for cooperation. Whether it's true doesn't matter. You start to doubt the men around you, the men you once trusted. You stop answering the taps on the wall. Stop whispering through cracks. Stop reaching for connection. Isolation deepens, not because of silence, but because of mistrust. You don't know who's real anymore, and that uncertainty is exactly what they wanted. The games warp memory itself. They tell you things so often you begin to believe them. They say your capture was your fault, that your mission was meaningless, that your side abandoned you willingly. You resist at first, but in the endless void of prison time, even lies sound like truth when repeated enough. You forget details, lose track of dates, question whether your memories are accurate or planted. You cling to fragments, a voice, a smell, a face. But even those blur until you wonder if they ever existed at all. Your mind splits under the strain. One part of you holds on stubbornly, clinging to scraps of identity, repeating your name, your rank, your country like a prayer. Another part wavers, whispering that it would be easier to believe them, easier to give in, easier to let go of the fight. You live between these halves, torn constantly, never certain which will win. The guards don't need to decide for you. They just watch, knowing the battle is already happening inside. The mind games don't stop when you sleep. Dreams twist into interrogations, into betrayals, into images of family turning their backs. You wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding, unable to shake the feeling that the dream was real. You lie awake afterwards, staring into the dark, replaying every word you heard, every promise made, every lie told. The games replay themselves endlessly, even without the guards present. They don't need to be there anymore. The prison itself continues the work. And when they do come back, when they open the door and drag you into the light, you realise the worst part. You're never sure what's real anymore. Every word could be truth or deception, every kindness a trick, every silence a trap. You move carefully, think cautiously, speak sparingly, but doubt never leaves you. You've learned their lesson. Pain ends. Beatings heal. Chains break. But the mind, once broken, never fits back together the same way again. Time used to be something you could measure. You once marked days by the rise and fall of the sun, the tick of a clock, the changing of weeks and seasons. Even in the jungle, before capture, you knew the difference between morning and night, between one day and the next. In the prison, that certainty dissolves until the concept of time itself feels like a trick. You try to count, you try to mark, but eventually you stop, because the years don't move the way years should. They blur. They smear into one another until all that remains is the endless fact of captivity. At first you count carefully. Scratches on the wall, tally marks pressed into stone, each line a declaration that you've survived another day. You whisper numbers under your breath, promising yourself you won't lose track. But the guards notice. They scrape your marks away, paint over them, laugh as they destroy the only measure you had. You start again, more carefully, but sooner or later they find those too. After a while you stop marking altogether, because the futility weighs heavier than the need. You try to use memory instead. You count meals, even though they never arrive at regular intervals. You measure nights by the length of coughing fits in the cells around you, by the cycles of fever breaking and building again. You tell yourself that a certain number of interrogations must mean a certain number of weeks, but the truth slips quickly. Meals blur. Nights stretch or collapse. Interrogations come when they choose, not when time dictates. Memory fails under pressure, and soon you aren't sure whether it's been 3 weeks or 3 months. The seasons outside offer no guidance. Sometimes you catch a glimpse through the high window, rain pelting the yard, leaves dripping in the jungle beyond, or the blinding light of a dry season sun. You try to anchor yourself to these changes, but they never align with what you think should be happening. Rain comes earlier or later, or maybe it's just that you've lost track entirely. You stop trying to connect weather to months, because nothing matches the calendar in your head. Your body becomes the only clock. You measure time by how thin you've grown, by how loose the rags hang from your frame, by how many new scars layer over the old. Your hair grows long, then is hacked short by guards when they tire of it, then grows again. Your fingernails curl, yellow and brittle, until they snap against the stone. Your teeth loosen, some falling out in your hands, others breaking during beatings. You see age forming in the men around you too, wrinkles deepening, backs hunching, hair whitening, all happening in silence, without mirrors, without recognition, until one day you realize everyone here looks decades older than they should. The endless days repeat themselves with only the smallest variations. Wake on the mat, drenched in sweat. Wait for food that may or may not come. Endure labour if the guards demand it. Return to the cell. Sleep in fragments. Wake again. Sometimes there's an interrogation. Sometimes there's a beating. Sometimes there's only silence. But mostly it's the repetition, the endless cycle of waiting. Days stack on days, months on months, until you can't separate one from another. Memory begins to fray under the weight of repetition. You try to recall the last holiday you celebrated, the last meal you enjoyed, the last time you heard your family's voices. But the images blur. You see your mother's smile, but you're not sure if you've remembered it correctly or reconstructed it from scraps. You picture your child running in the yard, but the details shift each time until you're not sure if the memory is real or imagined. The prison replaces everything with its own rhythm. The coughs, the footsteps, the scrape of bowls. Those become the only memories that stay sharp. Other prisoners change too. Men who arrived strong, voices firm, bodies unbroken, become shadows before your eyes. You watch them shrink, their eyes sinking deeper, their movements slowing, their words becoming quieter. Some survive years, others don't. You don't know which is worse. Watching someone vanish slowly in front of you, or watching them disappear in a single night and never return. Death loses its sharp edge after a while. It becomes just another part of the rhythm, another piece of the blur. Conversations repeat themselves. A man whispers about food, describing meals you've heard him describe 100 times before. Another murmurs about his wife, her face shifting with each telling until even he doesn't believe it anymore. You speak too, repeating the same stories of home, the same fragments of memory clinging to them even as they dissolve. Eventually, words lose their meaning. You sit in silence together, staring at the walls, waiting for something to change, knowing nothing will. The guards exploit the blur. They play with it, altering your sense of time deliberately. They keep lights on for days, never letting darkness fall, then plunge you into blackness for what feels like weeks. They feed you twice in a single day, then not again for 3. They wake you every hour for interrogations, then leave you untouched for what might be a month. You never know whether to expect chaos or nothing at all, and soon the difference stops mattering. The years smear together more completely under their manipulation. You measure time now not by days, but by survival of events. Before the fever, after the fever, before the beating that cracked your ribs, after the interrogation that left you half blind, before the man in the next cell disappeared, after the guards made you dig trenches until you collapsed. Time isn't linear anymore. It's just markers of suffering, strung together without sequence, without calendar, without end. Eventually you stop asking yourself how long it's been. The question carries too much weight. If it's been 1 year, the thought is unbearable. If it's been 5, the thought is worse. You stop counting. You stop marking. You stop trying. The blur becomes survival. Each day, or what you think is a day, is only about enduring until the next. You don't think about the total. You don't think about release. You only think about the mat beneath you, the rice in the bowl, the water in the cup, the next breath in your chest. But somewhere in the blur, the years pass. Your body wastes, your memories fade, your will bends. You know time is moving because you're not the same as when you arrived. You're older, thinner, weaker. The blur hasn't stopped the years. It's only hidden them, masking the march of time under layers of monotony. And when you think about it, that might be the cruelest trick of all. Release doesn't arrive like you imagined it. There is no triumphant march, no cheering crowd, no music swelling as chains fall away. It begins like everything else here, with uncertainty, with disbelief. A guard opens the cell one morning, his face expressionless, and orders you to stand. You're too weak to obey quickly, your legs trembling as you pull yourself upright, but he doesn't strike you this time. He waits. That alone feels strange enough to make you suspicious. They march you down the corridor, past doors you've memorized by sound, past the yard where you hauled logs and rocks, past the interrogation room where the air still stinks of sweat and fear. You expect another beating, another game, another punishment dressed up as something else. Instead, you're led outside the gates. You squint against the light, real daylight this time, not the thin beam from a barred window. It blinds you, stabbing your eyes, and you lift your hand instinctively to shield them. The guards laugh, muttering something you don't catch, and push you forward. You stumble onto a truck with other men. Some you recognize, some you don't. Their faces are gaunt, their eyes hollow, their bodies twisted from years of sickness and strain. You want to speak, to ask if this is real, but your throat closes up. Words feel dangerous, fragile, as if speaking them aloud will shatter the moment and drag you back into the cell. So you sit in silence, clutching the edge of the truck bed, waiting for the trick to reveal itself. The road stretches endlessly. Jungle passes by, green and alive, so different from the grey stone that's pressed against you for years. You smell wet leaves, mud, smoke from distant fires. The air moves, real air, carrying scents that don't reek of waste or rot. You breathe deeply, greedily, coughing as your lungs protest the sudden flood. The men beside you do the same. their chests heaving as if they're drowning on fresh air. No one believes it yet. Everyone waits for the guards to turn, to laugh, to drag them back. But they don't. The truck drives on, hour after hour, until finally it stops at a checkpoint. You see new faces, soldiers not wearing the uniforms of your captors. They speak words you recognise. They wave you forward. The chains are removed, one by one, falling heavy to the ground, with a sound you've dreamed about for years. You expect to feel lighter. You don't. The cuffs leave deep grooves in your wrists and ankles, scars that throb even without metal pressing into them. The weight lingers, phantom chains that rattle with every step. They tell you you're free now. You're handed to men who smile too much, who clap you on the back gently, who look at you with pity in their eyes. They offer water, food, clean clothes. Your body reaches for them instinctively, gulping water until it spills down your chin, stuffing food into your mouth so quickly you choke. You should feel relief. You should feel joy. Instead you feel panic. The food tastes too rich, too sharp. Your stomach cramping violently as it tries to adjust. The water feels strange, too clean, too cold, and you clutch your chest as if drowning. Even the clothes itch, soft fabric against skin that only knows rags. Freedom doesn't fit. The noise overwhelms you. Voices all around, orders shouted, engines rumbling, laughter in the distance. After years of silence, broken only by screams, the constant hum of normal life sounds unbearable. You flinch at every sharp tone, every door slamming, every burst of laughter that echoes too much like a guard's mockery. You duck your head, shoulders tightening, waiting for blows that don't come. People stare, confused, but you can't explain. You can't tell them that freedom is louder than prison ever was. Sleep doesn't come easily. They give you a bed, soft and clean, sheets white and crisp, but lying in it feels wrong. The silence of the room doesn't match the silence of the cell. You toss, turn, sweat soaking into the mattress, waking at every creak of the building. You miss the hardness of the mat, the weight of the shackles, the routine misery of the cell. Not because you want them, but because you've forgotten how to live without them. Your body doesn't understand comfort anymore. It only understands suffering. The nightmares return worse than ever. In prison, dreams blurred with reality until you couldn't tell the difference. Now, in freedom, they sharpen. You dream of the interrogation room, of fists, of bamboo rods, of the smell of rot. You wake screaming, heart racing, certain you're back inside. It takes minutes, sometimes hours, to remember you're not. Even then, doubt lingers. You sit on the edge of the bed, head in hands, whispering to yourself that it's over. But it never feels over. The people around you don't understand. They ask questions you can't answer. What was it like? How did you survive? Did they treat you badly? You laugh bitterly at that last one, the absurdity of the word badly when applied to years of starvation, beatings, disease, humiliation. You try to explain, but the words collapse in your throat. How do you describe the silence of isolation, the sound of torture through walls, the smell of death that never leaves your nose? You can't. So you stay quiet, and their pity deepens. Reunion should bring joy, but it's complicated. Faces you once longed for now feel distant, voices too strange, touches too unfamiliar. Your family embraces you, tears streaming, but your arms hang stiff at your sides, unsure how to return the gesture. You look into their eyes and see recognition, but you don't feel it yourself. Years of blur, of games, of lies have eroded the connection. You love them, but the prison has stolen the bridge between memory and presence. You feel like a ghost sitting at their table watching life continue without knowing how to join it. Even food becomes its own torment. They offer you feasts, tables loaded with meats, breads, fruits, desserts. You try to eat, but your body rejects it. Your stomach cramps, your tongue recoils at the richness. Your hands tremble at the abundance. You remember the watery rice, the foul soup, the hunger that gnawed without end. The contrast makes you sick, not grateful. You force yourself to swallow, to smile, to pretend. But inside you long for simplicity. Not because you miss the prison, but because prison taught your body how to live with nothing. And now it doesn't know how to handle plenty. Everyday life feels alien. The softness of chairs, the brightness of lights, the endless choices of food, clothes, words. You walk streets where people laugh freely, and you don't understand how they do it. You sit in rooms where silence is gentle, not oppressive, and it makes you anxious. You try to follow conversations, but the words drift by too quickly, meaningless in comparison to the language of survival you lived for so long. Freedom is confusing. Freedom is overwhelming. Freedom is terrifying. And always the prison lingers. Phantom chains bite your wrists when you close your eyes. Phantom footsteps echo in empty rooms. Phantom voices whisper lies you know aren't true, but still half believe. You're released, yes, but not healed. The body carries scars, but the mind carries more. The blur of years, the tricks of guards, the endless sickness, the sound of screams. They don't vanish with freedom. They live inside you, stitched into your bones, imprinted in every breath. You walk through life free, but part of you never leaves the cell. Part of you still sits on the mat, still counts the bites of rice, still waits for the door to slam open and the blows to rain down. Part of you still listens to silence and wonders if it's the silence of peace, or the silence before screams. That part never heals. That part never leaves. That part is the price of survival. Release doesn't mean escape. It doesn't mean peace. It doesn't mean healing. Release only means the cell door opened and your body walked out. Everything else, the sickness, the scars, the memories, they walked out with you. And they will follow you for the rest of your life. You lie awake, even now, far from the walls, far from the guards, far from the stink of sickness and the endless blur of days. The cell is gone, but it's not gone. The silence still creeps into the room at night. The chains still rattle faintly in your ears. The memories crawl back uninvited, bringing with them the heat, the hunger, the thirst, the screams. People tell you it's over. They tell you you're home, that you've survived, that the nightmare has ended. You nod because they need you to. But you know better. Release doesn't erase years. Freedom doesn't erase the weight of time. You carry it with you always, stitched into your skin, hidden beneath your scars, drifting like a shadow you can't shake. And in the quiet moments, when the world slows, when you hear the hum of silence in the air, you feel it again. The cell, the mat, the smell of decay, the footsteps that might come at any second. You breathe slowly, shallowly, as if waiting. Because part of you never left. Part of you will always be there, in the heat, in the darkness, in the blur that no release can undo.